Alex,
Boom.
can you hear me now?
When it's simple. Yeah.
No?
Let's go. Mine
I
works.
think you're good now.
All right, then you guys go. Hello, hello. Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So I was saying that love the energy. It's 5:30 p.m. Day two. Yesterday was a long day. Today is a long day. So thanks everyone for being here. We're gonna skip the intros because he made the intro. So whenever you take the word, you can say a few words about who you are in your company. But we don't have a lot of time, and I'm not an Argentinian, as Alex said. So I'm gonna when that's zero, it's zero. So we were having a conversation in the speakers room before, and I was telling them that I was preparing some questions that we were talking on email, and I actually found in my email that 4 years ago at South Summit I was moderating a panel with the same title. So it looked like open innovation. It's been mattering for a long time. So I mean, the intention here is to be quite practical and to the point. And if any of you can leave this session with a few things that you can action tomorrow in your companies, that would be ideal. So my first question is for all of you. It's what is open innovation? Like, what's your definition of open innovation? Do you want to go first?
All right, so there's a fun one that's the intersection of hoodies and suits. So that's why I kept my jacket, I guess, on the dress code. No, I think it's becoming very mature. To your point, I think it's been on a topic at different conferences for a while. I think for me, I don't know what's the definition of open innovation. I let the practitioner who are doing that all day long. But what we see more and more is that those teams ends up being just business development. They graduate into not being a concept, a specific team called open innovation. It becomes just the way you do business, the way you do partnership, the way you're gonna survive as a company. As you know, we tried at Silicon Foundry. So I'm based in San Francisco. So we help corporates basically engage with that innovation ecosystem across multiple ways, getting the right connection, meeting the right startups and players. And one thing we usually say is to have some sort of portfolio approach. So for me, that innovation approach is basically some sort of strategic business development. You can have different ways to do that. And they're not mutually exclusive, and we usually recommend to do different ones. Could be investing in funds, could be making direct investment, could be making pilots, could be doing traditional business development. So all those things needs to happen. So that's this notion of portfolio and business development, in my opinion.
We have one definition.
Long one.
Well, I totally agree with your definition.
We don't have you.
The mic is not working, I think. Hello, hello. You're gonna go while we wait? I think your mic is not working.
No?
Is my yeah?
Yeah.
You hear me? Yeah.
Hear me?
No.
No?
So
Well, I can speak.
No.
Now we're good.
Now it's getting warm.
Now we're good.
No, I totally agree with your definition. If companies want to
well,
survive,
mine works.
it's the way we need to work. And as you were talking, we need to be more practical. We need to explain examples. So I will try to provide a few examples that NAturgy is doing in open innovation as a way of explaining that for us is the way of evolving our business and to satisfy the needs of our customers. For example, we are working in an initiative that is called Start for Big. Most of the challenges we have nowadays are cross-sector, so it's a way of working between 5 different sectors and startups. We are working with, I was at Barcelona, CaixaBank, SEAT and Telefónica, and in this case we are trying to look for pilots that can be easily tested between 2 or more and can be scaled up in a fast way. So it's a way of doing, let's say, more fast open innovation. Another example would be Madrid in Motion. In this case, we have some challenges that are very important for our citizens or in which we can collaborate with the public administration. So in this case, an important challenge for cities is mobility. It's a way of collaborating, trying to solve a problem that is an important problem for citizens. So I have tried to give my explanation, providing a couple of examples.
Yep.
Okay, for me, I would say 3 different definitions, not only one, 3. First, the former one, I would say that is the only way, let's say the only way to bring new ideas and new ways of doing inside the company. And for me, this the the most important second definition is the way to transform the internal culture of the company. I don't know any other way. This is for me, the way you move something that thinks in another way, have another idea, works in a different space, in a different business, and is able, let's say, to bring you different proposals. No?
Yep.
And the third is the way to create the future's business, because companies, as incumbents. Sorry, I don't dress jackets, but the jacket is behind.
It's there. I saw him.
I had a meeting this morning with the president, so sorry for that.
Yeah.
But the companies, incumbents are very good, let's say, in improving the processes that we run every day. But we are not so good, let's say, adding new, good and real propositions. And from my understanding, this is a better, let's say, way to create those future business. So 3 definitions, sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, for me, open innovation is, as far as products and services are now knowledge-based with a lot of multidisciplinary knowledge, and a company doesn't know of everything. So it's about structuring the management of innovation collaborative projects, because collaboration has been done from decades and long ago, but it's the way you structure it and identify your partners and around the idea of a project, and also the way you fund that innovation with different instruments, not only with your own resources, but with public funding and with private funding, like new alternative finance instruments like crowdfunding and so on.
Okay, so just to sum up, from you, Ludo, I take that open innovation at the very beginning, back in the day, started like everything quite vertical, like kind of like a new department doing weird stuff.
Yeah.
And now it's becoming horizontal, right?
Sure.
From you, I take collaboration, right? Like working with other players, because if you're by yourself, it's actually not, you don't move that fast. From you, Ignacio, I take culture, right? Like it's a way to transform the culture of the company. And from you, Francisco, I'm going to take management, which is basically the new way of doing things.
Yeah.
So I think we have a good panel, because we have NAturgy and Bankia, so 2 big corporations, and we have Silicon Foundry and Zabala, which is 2 organizations working with multiple corporates, multi-vertical, multi-sector. So from each of you, I would love to talk a little bit the triggers, like what makes a company get into this space, working with startups, thinking in different ways, collaborating with other corporations, sometimes even, and we have that within some of our partnerships, that we have companies that are competitors working together with us, right? So I would love to understand from your perspective, what are those triggers that actually one day you realize, okay, this is the only way to go? Can we start like the other way around?
I think that sooner or later companies realize that cooperating with people who has the knowledge is cheap. After all, it's cheaper than doing by your own way, and you will get sooner to the market. And as long as the life cycles are shorter, the sooner you get to the market, the better.
Yep.
Basically.
In the case of Bankia, I think that the trigger was, but the trigger has been changing during the way. No? First of all, it was because we needed to understand what was happening in the market. No? We came from a very bad situation, and we needed to know, after recovering that situation, what was happening in the market as soon as possible. So we created, let's say, a kind of radar, let's say, to understand the different trends and companies making things in the market. This was the first trigger. No? After knowing, let's say, what happened in the market, the radar, we realized that we needed, let's say, to work with them to add those propositions as soon as possible, you said before, within the portfolio. No? Probably is the point that we are now. So we are trying to move all the things that we think that could be good for our customers or business or people into the business, let's say, normal proposition. And this is something that we are still on then. No?
Yep. Silvia.
Well, as you know, in the energy sector, we are having a big transformation. We have big challenges, as for example, the decarbonization of the energy mix, this has an impact on the operations we do in our assets. And of course, the society needs a different relation with companies and needs a different way of consuming energy. In this context, it is impossible for us to do it alone. So we need to collaborate, again, this word, to build new business models, to understand and to act rapidly to develop these new solutions and services that the market and the decarbonization of the sector needs.
So I'm surprised nobody said fear, because that's unfortunately a lot of times that's, I'm freaking out. I'm the CEO of this company. I see my competitors struggling, and so, but that's the bad reason. So I hate when it's the case, because then you end up working, as advisors, as what we do, especially when they come to the US to be inspired to meet startups and investors and all that stuff. If it's out of fear, it's usually not cool, right? I mean, at the end, people are important. Usually you have motivated people with the open innovation who do investment. They're kind of the external facing part of the company. Usually they're internal rebels, so they want to be like that, have that conviction and be passionate about it. So hopefully fear is not always the trigger. I think for me it's like when the top leadership has the realization that you need to learn from other industries. So we have a big, we work with a bunch of companies, international US companies, and one of them in the UK is in the energy business. Oil and gas, you would think is what they look at, but they realize they're interested in mobility. They're looking at things in nutrition, like transforming CO2 in food. So all those things are new business units possibly, and so that's where when the leadership realizes that there's beyond fear, there's opportunities. I think that's where it starts. And I would say the last thing, which is almost a requirement to get started, is like understanding what's that unfair advantage. I like to say unfair advantage that you can tell the world. You can tell startup in a few lines on one page, this is what we want to do. And so once you have a bit of fear, a bit of conviction, and the realization you need to learn somewhere else, and an understanding of who you are, and that very simple understanding of your unfair advantage, I think everything is aligned, right? And that's why it could be a very big playbook, a large team with a lot of a budget, not just a team in one corner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think fear is a great segue for the next question, which is, fear in general, which is the case in many companies, is driven by fear sometimes, and fear makes you be really reactive rather than strategic. So, we could argue that a lot of the open innovation programs and startup programs that some corporations are running, the value is vague and it's sometimes like a reaction to, oh shit, like we need to do something in that space. So similar to CSR back in the day, like everyone used to do CSR. So what are some of the metrics that you are using to actually track, okay, what's the value of doing open innovation? Not the PR aspect, which I think is important too, because it affects culture, but what are some internal KPIs that you use with your companies or your clients to track success of working on open innovation? Want to go first?
Sure. I'll be short this time again to the practitioner, but of course, it's very hard to measure the activities. It's not the number of events, the number of things that you're doing that matters. It's the outcomes. So I would say outcome-driven KPIs. What came out of it, and usually it has to do with some sort of the adoption of a business unit. One typical best practice is like for corporate VCs, where there's always some sort of executive sponsorship to validate an investment when it's strategic. So that could be a sort of KPI that we're looking at when you invest, but there's plenty of others.
So of course, what needs to be measured are the outcomes, and it's not so easy. And sometimes you need some time until they come. So we measure them, but sometimes it's not so easy. I would say that maybe you were talking about culture, and I think this open innovation affects as well to our internal processes. So maybe the time we need to do things is an important KPI, because it's a result of this way of working as well. Maybe not in the pilot, but in a general way in the company.
Yep.
I was thinking in the answer, but I think that there are many different things to measure. No? One is from the pure operational point of view. I mean, when you run an external innovation open program, for instance, what you are looking for, one of the things you are looking for, because probably you look for many things, but one of the things you are looking for is, one of the targets that I have is, one of the goals is to to do the things quick and cheap. If I have to introduce something in the bank, but I am not sure that the thing is good or not, try it, but cheap and quick.
Yep.
This is one of the metrics that we measure from the pure operational point of view. No?
Mm-hmm.
Other one is very intangible. No? Intangible is how we are changing the internal culture of the bank. And it's something that you can measure in this internal structure that now, for instance, in Bankia is running innovation. At the beginning, innovation was running only from my team, let's say. And now innovation is being running directly by the board of directors. So I propose, but they decide which is the agenda, which are the targets, which are the challenges that we have to run, what are the proof of concept. We assign a proof of concept and a sponsor and a partner. Mm-hmm. They work with them, they say, developing the idea. They say, this is the way I measure the things are changing. Yep. Probably slower than I wish, no? Yep. But they are changing, no? And another one is when you finally decide to invest in a good company. We don't invest from the financial point of view. We invest to create something, no? To deliver something new for our customers. Obviously, in that stage, you expect income. Let's say you expect real results. So, depending on the phase you are, you measure different things. No?
Yep. In my point of view, there are more economic KPIs and other more intangible. The economic ones will be, as Ignacio has said, do I introduce in the market any new product or new services based on the innovation process that I engage, or do I increase my turnover or my exports due to that, or do I consolidate my innovation team within the company due to that innovation open process? The time to market is also a KPI with a clear metric. Or there are more intangibles that do this allow me to networking with a broader community, consolidate broader networks of collaboration with qualified people. It depends on whether you have more short or medium long term what you want to measure.
So, I mean, touching on the culture point and the fact that for a lot of corporations, and something that I think is kind of an evolution, is that you don't expect financial return like as an investor, as we do as investors, but a nice fit between the corporate and the core problems and the startup. But that requires a lot of internal work on processes. That's usually what kills the relationship between startups and corporates. But also internally, in terms of communication, like communicating your teams and the entire company, the importance of doing open innovation. Like, I think, in my experience, like if the company is doing really, really well, they have the resources, but if it's not really well communicated, internally some people might start asking, why are we doing this? If investing in marketing or whatever, we grow, and if you have fear and things are not doing really well, people might have the same question. So for you, Ignacio and Silvia specifically, like in your companies, do you have any best practices on communicating? Like, do touch a point, which is leadership. Like if it comes from C-level or CEO, it's obviously easier. So do you have any tips or tricks on how to actually communicate that internally?
So if I may, but CX sponsorship is not only the thing you need. It's not only, because the CEO is only one, but we have behind 16,000 people. No? So you need more. And it's very difficult in a big company to change the day-to-day. It's very difficult because at the end of the day, the money that they earn are coming from the product that they sell today. Yep. They don't sell the new products you propose. So it's very difficult to change that. You need to create a figure inside that I call the believer, no? That you call the believer. No? You need to create believers, such as ambassadors in each of the different units, let's say, promoting the innovative vision, let's say, within that department. This is what I did, let's say. As you said before, it takes a long time.
Oh yeah.
It takes a long time. But it's, from my understanding, is really sustainable. If you achieve that, all the company thinks in innovation, not only you. So things happens alone. No? This is my particular vision. You need a couple of, let's say, success, a couple of success, and to promote those success across across the organization as
Yep.
much as you can. No,
Yep.
what they did. No, you
Yeah.
need to promote those.
Yeah.
With disengage with these advisors and with leadership that let people do as advisors, it's easier to build this model because for NAturgy it's very important that in innovation projects we work together, all the different actors involved. So we need to have our business units there. Otherwise, it's not going to be a new solution in the market. So that's why it's very important, on the one hand, that the directors of the company are involved, that they believe in this model, and that we can build this system that you were explaining.
Like, and usually, like, and we've seen this many, many times, and this is a question for you, Ludo. Like, C-level needs to be involved, they want to engage with startups. The way to go, usually, is let's go to San Francisco, let's go to Silicon Valley. So put the C-level team on a plane, go to San Francisco, have a tour around Googleplex, where it's a company that they have like 100 billion in cash and access to infinite talent, and then they try to replicate that when they come back. So what's your experience? You've been in the US for 11 years now?
Yeah.
San Francisco, 6, 7?
Yeah.
So what have you seen?
Well, I guess the first thing is there's a fatigue from the ecosystem because everybody's is used to those delegations. So I don't know if it's the best practice indeed to send a delegation there unless you at the situation in the situation where you need to get them to learn the vocabulary, what's a minimum viable product market fit, and if you're at that level, I guess there is a role for those delegation. But I would argue it's more of a training. It's more something that should come from executive coaching or something like this. Those visits could be extremely efficient if they're outcome driven, right? And that's kind of the business we're in. Is basically making sure that we organize meetings that are outcome driven, right? Where there is a preparation, on both sides. Meaning the folks they're gonna meet know exactly what NAturgy is. They know the assets. They know where you operate. They know that unfair advantage that I was mentioning before. And on the other side, you and your executives, whether it's the CEO or whatever, you also have like. You did some homework on who you're going to meet so that it could be a productive conversation. What I'm describing is basically business development. So there's nothing wrong coming to Silicon Valley. Actually, I encourage any corporates to keep that on the radar. Whatever people say and are cynical about, it's still one of the center of innovation, and there's a lot going on, but you just need to do that in a very kind of a BD-minded standpoint, I would argue. And a lot of corporations now don't go to San Francisco anymore. They go to China, and so it's another thing, because they want to be blown away, and you're blown away. But I think the funny thing we see now in the U.S. is a lot of startups copying some Chinese startups, some Chinese business models. So it comes to a point where the Western world is copying China, but in a way where that's GDPR friendly, that's privacy friendly. The face recognition, whatever they're doing in retail scenarios, is compatible with what we expect in Western culture. So. You can do that, but there are like some things to respect, not to make it a tourism trip, obviously.
Yep. So if you want to go to San Francisco, ping Ludo.
Anytime.
We have 30 seconds, and I have a question that is quite deep, actually. So short answers in terms of what are some predictions that you might have in terms of open innovation? Like the companies, the corporations that will survive, a few of them will survive. So how do they look like in the near future?
I'll do it super quick. Peripheral vision. Don't look at your core business, but look at things that are at the periphery. Adjacencies, another way to say that, so that's usually where the next big thing for your innovation strategy for a given corporate is going to be. So the folks who have that mentality to look outside of their core business, that's probably the smarter corporations.
Any other quick answer to that?
Well, quick answer will be maybe we don't know what we will be.
Yep.
So thinking in this way, we will be able to develop other business models in which we are not thinking now.
Yep.
My quick answer is similar to Ludovich. I think that the limits between the different sectors has been delayed.
Yep.
And you have to look around, things around that happening around. Clear.
Yep.
Which is good for startups, right? You can be creative,
I will say, as it happened with the dinosaurs, it will not be the biggers who will survive, but the ones who better adapt to change.
Yep.
The quickest.
That's a nice quote to finish. Alex, really sorry. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, guys.